Hello, and welcome to 9 to 5 Wellness Show. Today, we are going to talk about the employee recognition effect. We know from research that recognized employees feel valued and appreciated, which leads to increased job satisfaction and overall happiness at work. Now, positive employee morale creates a ripple effect throughout the organization, improving teamwork, communication, and camaraderie among employees. Yet, what we see is that 51% of employees state that they would like more recognition for their work, which demonstrates a need for HR leaders and wellness practitioners to have more employee recognition programs as an effective business practice for organizations. So, on this LinkedIn Live, we are going to delve into this topic that holds immense power in transforming workplaces, which is employee recognition, and its profound impact on employee satisfaction and productivity. And for that, I have a very special guest with me to talk about this topic on. Our guest today is Nelson Scott. He is a full time consultant, speaker, and trainer since 1995. Nelson sees his programs and writing as opportunities to remind audiences and readers that what they already know and challenge them to build on their knowledge to make the right hiring decisions and use staff recognition to increase employee engagement and reduce staff turnover. Nelson has authored 3 books on employee retention and recognition. So, on this very topic. So, I am going to let Nelson take it from here and introduce his books and his work. Welcome, Nelson.
Thanks, Aisha. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
I'm so glad you're here. So, tell us more about your books.
Well, as you mentioned, I've written 3 books, 2 of which actually are particularly focused on recognition. The first one was called Thanks, Great Job, and that really focused on how recognition can be used to improve retention, boost morale, and reduce turnover. And the real emphasis is on simple, inexpensive ways of doing that. That was written about a decade ago. And more recently, I've written a book called Thanks Again, which is a follow-up, I guess. And it's more simple, inexpensive ways for busy leaders to recognize staff. In between those 2 books, actually took a bit of a detour, and I wrote a short ebook that was called 13 Reasons Managers Are Unlucky When Hiring, and which is not unrelated to this topic. Really, I'm really focused on providing my clients, the people I speak to, with the tools and techniques they need to hire, engage, and retain the right staff.
Wonderful. So, I recommend all the listeners to check out these books. I have read the first one, thanks, great job. And that's what was the inspiration to have this podcast interview. I want to talk about what are employee recognition programs, like what shape and form they can take.
Well, the emphasis in my work is really on what frontline leaders can do. Whether that's a school principal, a department head, someone with a small clinic, perhaps. Those are the type of people I really want to focus on. What I know about those people is they're busy people and they don't have a lot of money for staff recognition. So
Sure.
really, it's kind of a mindset, and we want to create an environment or a culture where people feel valued and respected as individuals and appreciated for how they contribute, and what they achieve. It's a workplace where people feel comfortable being themselves. It's where they feel they belong.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's correct. So, what are some of the inexpensive, affordable ways to have employee recognition programs in place?
Well, there are a number of ways that we can, I guess, save money. One is, first of all, realize that it's not what you do. It's not, it's not a trinket or a trophy or a certificate that you give people that really makes a difference. It's your words. It's what you say that really is important. It's how you explain things. Actually, one of the things I do is I talk in terms of, I use the acronym GREAT to remind people of what the ingredients are of meaningful staff recognition. And to begin with, the message must recognition must be inspired by a genuine sense of appreciation of what the person did. We make that message stronger by making it relevant and tying it to what the organization says is important, its mission statements, its values, its goals. We make it explicit by being specific in describing what the person did that we appreciate, so that it shows that we're paying attention. We also want to find appropriate ways to recognize people. There's no magic one size fits all approach to recognition. It has to be tied to the individual, focused on the individual. What are their interests? And more also importantly, what are their recognition preferences? Some people like to be recognized in public. Some uh, would prefer to be recognized privately. And finally, we want to be timely about recognition. Provide the recognition soon after the event. The longer we wait, the more the the excitement is lost. We don't remember exactly what the person did.
Great, which is also your acronym. Okay, let me summarize this. So it is genuine, and then R is for relevant. I think, okay, so now this is like a memory test for me. E is for
Explicit,
explicit, and then A, appropriate, and T is timely.
that's correct.
That's great. So let's talk about the timely part of it, because normally managers or your boss would, or supervisors, they would wait till the end of the project to uh, give recognition to the team. So what do you suggest? Should it be delivered um, in regular intervals? What do you think the good time frame is?
Well, I do, again, there's no magic answer, but I do think we don't wait until the end. We recognize people for how they're contributing, that in ways that is moving us closer to where the goal is for the organization. Um, some people would suggest that people need to be recognized about once a week, and that probably goes back to a 12-question survey that Gallup has used, and a lot of people are familiar with. And one of the questions is, have you been recognized for doing your job well anytime in the last 7 days? Um, I'm not sure that's necessarily what that means, but it does tell us recognition should be delivered regularly. Um, you made reference to research. Other researchers said, people can't remember being recognized anytime in the last 6 months or things like that. And that's way too long. So I think recognition should occur, frequently throughout the project or whatever people are working on.
Yeah. Yeah. So as often as possible would probably be a good frequency, right? And especially if you find somebody who has done a great job or exceeded your expectations, that's when you should pause and recognize the employee.
Yeah, one of the things I suggest is just keeping a staff list and noting each time that you recognize someone, and take a look at this list from time to time. And gee, I haven't recognized her for quite a while. Let's find a reason to thank her for doing her job well.
Wonderful. Yeah, keeping a list would be very helpful in this regards. So, according to a research study by Quantum Workplace, as I was trying to get ready for this interview, I was trying to just read some research, and this particular research study came up. And what it suggests is that employees who are recognized they are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work. And when organizations have a formal recognition program, they experience 31% less voluntary turnover, which is a huge cost to the organizations and businesses if they have a high turnover, because they have to train the employees again, they have to find the new employee for that position again. So what are some of the other benefits, though, that the organizations would have if they were to have a recognition program?
Well, I think you hit upon a couple of really important ones. One is people just feel more engaged, and secondly, people are less likely to leave. Bob Nelson, who's written a lot about recognition, says that people will take a job for more money, but they'll leave for more recognition. And people have told me, and I've seen in the research that supports this, that people do leave a job where they don't feel appreciated. They
Right.
don't feel they belong, and so on. So what are some of the other benefits? Well, I think it's good. Let's talk about wellness. It's good for people's mental health to be recognized. The Mental Health Commission of Canada has identified 12 factors that contribute to mental wellness at work, and recognition is one of those. But the interesting thing, there are several other factors that relate back to recognition. Well, part of it is just the organizational culture. Is it a culture where people feel respected and trusted and appreciated and valued for who they are? And recognition can do that. Another one is clear expectations and leadership. Well, if we go back to being really specific or explicit in describing what people do, that's one way of making expectations clear. The other one is when recognition is relevant, where we're saying, it becomes a strategic tool to remind people what is important. Too often, when companies will go through a strategic planning process and nothing happens, nothing really changes. It's like going to Las Vegas. What happens during strategic planning stays in the executive offices, and it's a way of getting that message out. Another one factor is involvement and influence, and recognition is just, again, valuing people, valuing their opinions, and letting them know they're appreciated. And another one, I guess one more I'll mention is, we talk about work-life balance.
Yes.
Here in Canada, the federal government is considering legislation to give people the right to disconnect. Well, I don't think that, it's nice to have the legislation, but really part of the respect that we show for the people that work with us is we don't phone them on the weekend with a work-related question, or in the evening. We allow them to have their own lives, and so on. We respect the fact. One of the themes I develop in in my latest book is that recognition should be family friendly. We should recognize the importance of families. Something as simple as, the number one tool that I identified in the book is thank you notes. Well, rather than just sending thank you notes to staff members, send it to their families and say thank you for sharing your spouse or your parent or your child with us.
Yes.
And they're important to us, and this is how they contribute. That is going to be powerful in creating that work-life balance as well.
Yes, yes, yes. I want to highlight something that you've mentioned a couple of times, and that is that with employee recognition, you create a sense of belonging. And that I want to really just highlight over here, pause and take a note of it, because if you take a look at human psychology, which is, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we as human beings, we are motivated by certain needs, right? So the most basic are physiologic, which are like food, water, a roof over your head. Now, once those are taken care of, You have needs that are centered around love and belonging and self-esteem and self-actualization. So this recognition, employee recognition, directly addresses the higher level needs that a human being has, which is respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, and then sense of connection with the rest of the team or your workplace, people at workplace. So the second thing I want to highlight are the thank you notes. Tell me a few ways that the thank you notes work and actually increase the sense of belonging and engagement at work.
Well, first of all, a thank you note, a handwritten thank you note, um, conveys a message that the person is valuable enough that you're willing to use. So willing to take a little bit of my time to write the note, because if I do that, I mean, obviously, it's handwritten. Nobody else can do it for me. You can't get that effect with a email or a letter that comes out of a printer. Um, something, a silly little thing I recommend to people is that they never write thank you notes in black ink or red ink. Black, because it looks like it comes out of a photocopier. It's like everyone's getting the same message. And I found people have given me examples of letters they have got that clearly are dear occupant. It doesn't. The person writing doesn't know the person they're writing it to. And the reason we don't use red ink, well, we all went to school, didn't we? We know red is never going to be good news. So the color I use whenever I write a thank you note is always green. Green has lots of. It's just the color I like, a color that I think that happens. Uh, I take my green pen, I write my little thank you note, address it, and I can put it in people's mailbox at work. And I would probably do that most often, but occasionally I will actually mail it to somebody's home. Think about what you get in the mail. You get bills. Don't even get a lot of those anymore because they're electronic, but we do get some bills. We get a lot of advertising. We don't get very many handwritten letters or notes in the mail. It really stands out among all that other. The family members see it before you get home from work. The other thing is, I get the most colorful, the biggest, the most colorful stamp I can find and put on that envelope. Again, just a small thing. And if I can find a stamp that's themed to something that's important to people, I will do that. Whether it can be a historical event, for example, most recently in Canada, they published a stamp that highlighted the solar eclipse. There's stamps that come out for Christmas, for Eid, and other religious holidays throughout the year, Hanukkah, and so on. So that can happen, or just a stamp that's maybe for Black History Month or something like that, so that it just it becomes relevant to the person, important to the person that's receiving it. The stamp is selected with the person in mind.
Yeah, that's like personalization, customization, and then, as you said, that the other person finds it, they can relate to it, so it's relevant to them. Wonderful. And it's so nice to have something in the mail, right? Just something shows up in the mail, especially if you weren't expecting it. Like I had a thank you card from one of my clients yesterday in the mail, and I opened it. It was such a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting it, and it it just felt so good, just like you said. Um, okay, so one of the things I believe in organizations and workplaces, what the expectation with the employee recognition is that it's always going to be top down, right? So the management or leadership is going to recognize employees or team members for their outstanding performance or achievement, which reinforces organizational values for sure. But does it have to be always top down?
No, actually, and you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that because we think of recognition as flowing down when in fact it can come from any direction. I mean, I think one of the most powerful types of recognition is peer recognition because first, it's not as we kind of expect it from the boss. We don't necessarily expect it from our coworkers, but we really trust our coworkers. Somebody who is works next to us understands what's required to do the job better than anyone else in the organization. And when they say thank you, that's it. I'll give you one example that was actually in my first book, and that is um, a, a grade one this was in a school, obviously. A grade one teacher came to the kindergarten teacher and she said, you know, I always appreciate getting kids that were in your kindergarten class. They are so ready to start grade one.
Mm.
I mean, that's a kind of Mark Twain once said, I can live on a good compliment for 2 months. Well, that certainly is a kind of compliment that people last. So that
Yes.
happens. But the other one that we sometimes, I mean, and we can recognize, suppliers and things like that, people outside the organization. But the other thing is recognition can flow up. We can thank our boss for the type of leadership she's providing to us.
Yeah.
And again, that's even more unexpected. And we can do it, and we don't have to wait until National Boss Day on October 16th. We can do it anytime. And we can just, thanks for your leadership. Thank you for making sure we had the supplies we needed to do this, that type of thing. Thank you for the freedom you've given me to make decisions within my area of responsibility.
Yes. I love that you highlighted that it can be the other way around where your employees are recognizing the manager because I think a lot of times people don't realize that people in C-suite and leadership are also human beings and they have the same needs as us. So when they get recognized for good leadership skills or something that they did well for you, it's the same way. It works the same way. They would feel good too, and the positive behavior is reinforced. So, okay, so we talked about written praise that you can write thank you notes or write thank you on sticky notes or use a card and mail it. What about financial benefits, like bonuses, incentives? What do you think of those?
Not much.
Why
Um,
so?
why? Because we really most organizations can't afford enough to give a bonus that really is significant for that. And what happens? There was another story that I tell again in the first book, and that was the wife of a friend of mine was talking about it. Where he worked, the company gave out bonuses.
Okay.
Well, one time they gave out a bonus, a fairly significant bonus, I guess, and a bonus was tied to the success of the organization, the lack of reducing injuries, all those kinds of things, which really most of which weren't even within the control of the people that were getting the bonuses. They only would contribute in a small part of it. So that was fine. That was nice. The next year, the bonus was lower. It was a much smaller thing. And she says, that they're really upset about that because everyone counts on the bonuses, and they run up the credit card bills because the bonus is coming, they can pay it off and so on. Just give me another example. I met an Australian on a trip one time, and he was talking about his sister who worked for an IT company or something, and he said, she just got a $25,000 bonus, and I said, "Wow, that's great." He says, "No, not really. The previous year she got 50,000. She's looking for another job." And the bonus becomes kind of an entitlement and so on. And all the way bonuses it's like a paycheck. Everybody's entitled to a paycheck. What you really earn in an organization is recognition. That's, that brings in the emotional income, which is at least as important as the financial income that we get.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
people don't remember getting bonuses. I remember Chester Elton in one of his books talks about the fact that, a few months later, people don't even remember they got a bonus. Yeah.
It becomes part of the paycheck. It's more of a part of a paycheck like mentality. Okay, I worked hard and I got this.
And you get a tax bill with it.
That's a good one. For sure, Nelson.
I'm very sensitive because here in Canada, our deadline is Tuesday for filing our income tax. I know you in the US,
We have done it. Yeah, it's
you've
April
done it. Yeah,
15th. Yep, April 15th.
you've gone through the pain.
So it's on your mind.
It's on my mind. Yes.
Yes, it's on top of your mind. Okay, so how can organizations measure the impact of recognition programs? Like, what are a few key ways to identify that the recognition program is actually working?
Um, I guess one of the ways of doing that, well, I mean, we talked about turnover and things like that, doing exit interviews, but also doing stay interviews to see how people are feeling about how they're recognized and other things about the job. We can do a more traditional type of survey, though I would suggest probably want to use pulse surveys, really short little surveys that maybe only asks one or two questions. And one of the questions may be, you know, are you satisfied that you are recognized frequently enough for doing your job well? I made up that question. It's a really bad question. Don't ask that question, but ask a question. Give me
In
a
a
few
different
minutes. I
way.
can come up with a much better question. One of the ways I ask questions is um, the kind of four parts of the question. The first part is on a 1 to 9 scale. How satisfied are you with the recognition you're receiving?
Right.
The second question is, explain that rating. Third question is how satisfied on that 1 to 9 scale could you be with recognition, and what would we have to do
Right.
to get that different score? And that, which is really useful because often when you just say, "Are you satisfied with recognition?" and on a 1 to 5 scale, and they give you 3, and you don't really know what it means, you have to guess, or you have to go back and start asking. This way, that type of question I just described will give you almost an action plan to move forward.
Right. Right. And I believe I like that you highlighted the employee feedback and surveys. Those are easy to conduct, and also you could ask questions about how to implement a better recognition program, just like you said. One of the things I would probably include on that would be the frequency, right? If the frequency is enough or not, which we talked about earlier, but just throwing it back to the team members and asking them how frequently they want to be recognized. And I know we also talked about the recognition being appropriate, like what medium are you using? Is that the kind of medium or the kind of recognition that your team members want? It could be a multiple choice question in which you can give some choices to your employees, as in what type of recognition, what form of recognition would work best for them. So surveys are great.
Yes, and another possibility is just having someone do a focus group. It could be a staff member, or it could be someone from outside the organization, and just ask a couple of those questions, and people will come up and they will explain how they feel about the recognition and what they feel could be done differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, adjusting and evolving the recognition programs is through surveys is important because you might have something in place for years and maybe it's not working anymore. So it's always a good idea to throw a survey out and ask your team members and employees and see if there are any adjustments to be made, or you need to evolve your recognition program, as in where probably you are sending once a year holiday card to all of your employees, but that is going unnoticed and you want to start sending in something else and maybe more frequently like a thank you card every quarter, or even more so, send some text messages. I know we talked about that text and email does not have the same effect, but I believe email not so much, but text messages, people read it and you can save it and still show it off to your friends. Like that's the biggest thing with the written message, either through text or cards or sticky notes, that people want to show it off. They want to brag about like how well they did and how happy the leadership and the team members are with their work. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. In fact, if you look in the cover of both my books, I'll hold this one up because it's bigger.
Yes. Oh
Um,
yeah.
that's a sticky note. And the second one, my graphic designer said, put another sticky note on as well as a thank you card. Um, and we do that because it's quick and it's easy to do. You talk about text messages. Well, if you're commuting, not if you're driving, but if you're on a bus or a train or something commuting to work, you could just be sitting there texting. Something else that you can do is you can leave a voicemail for people. You can leave a note on their desk that they'll discover when they come in to, sneak around late at night, or not late at night. Before you go home, leave a few notes. Um, you've got this little tool here. Record a video message and send it to people. Um, and these are all really quick, little, inexpensive ways of recognizing people. And as we said at the beginning, with these most leaders, frontline leaders, most leaders, period, are busy people, and in many organizations they don't have very much money, and then some no money at all for recognition. They're prohibited from spending money on recognition.
Yeah, those are some very good tips. I love the idea of video, which I do make a lot of videos. This is a video interview too, and I did not think of it though. And you're right. Like if you're commuting on a bus or a train or subway, you can easily record like a 30-second message. It doesn't take more than 30 seconds to recognize someone, thank someone, but you record it and hit send, and that is gonna just brighten someone's day. And I like it that all of these tips and techniques that you have shared with us, they're not costly because a lot of organizations don't have the budget for it. So that's great. And they don't cost a lot of time too. So you don't have to invest a lot of time. You just have to keep it front and center in your mind, though, that this is something that needs to be done and it's a priority. Great. So, Nelson,
Can I
if
just pick up on something you said? I think,
sure.
or something you said made me think about that. The power of recognition is that it's often unexpected. It's not planned. I mean, other than, we get into formal programs and once every 5 years, they bring people together and they say, well, let's see what you all have in common. Well, you've been here for 5 years, and during those 5 years, you haven't died and you haven't been fired. But apart from that, you survived, and that's all we really recognize. Well, it's pretty meaningless, and nobody says that. But in fact, when you think about it, that's exactly what we're recognizing people for. But the unexpected, the quick little note that you do, you talked about holiday cards, birthday cards, and so on. Well, make them a recognition tool by adding a little note saying, in the last year since your last birthday, here's a couple of ways that you've contributed that really stand out in my memory, and do that. It's a small little extra, but I think it makes that routine birthday card becomes something special. And the neat thing is, people keep sticky notes. They keep thank you notes, or that we send to them. I've had people send me thank yous for the thank you notes I've sent. They've sent me pictures of the note I wrote sitting on their desk. Somebody even said, "What am I supposed to do when I get one of these? Should I thank the person that sent it?" And I said, "Of course you should, because we want to have behaviors that's repeated, and if that's a behavior we want repeated, then we should thank people for doing it."
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you. Send thank you note to the sender too, because that's how you can recognize them for their action. And we want that positive reinforcement both ways. So that is really good. Thank you so much for sharing all of these tips. So, Nelson, if people want to get in touch with you, where they can find you, and where can they learn more about your work?
Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably a good place to find me. I'm also on X, though not very often. I have a website which probably a little bit out of date, but it's called greatstaffrecognition.com, greatstaffrecognition.com. When you're there, you can sign up for a newsletter that I send out every 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks. So that's it. People want to phone me. The phone number is 780-232-3828. And my email address is N as in Nelson, M as in mother, Scott at TELUS, which is TELUS.net. So always you can get a little. I'm just delighted if people contact me. I love talking about staff recognition. I'm passionate about it.
I can tell you shared so many golden nuggets with us. So thank you. And I'll include the links in the show notes of our podcast episode. And it's they're also on our LinkedIn event page too. So thank you so much, Nelson, for sharing your wisdom about on staff recognition and employee recognition.
Thank you for the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.